You're watching the TCMMA podcast.
Khamzat Chimaev's setback will force Dana White to hand Robert Whittaker a title shot. Now, it's very hard for me to entertain the fact that Khamzat could lose a fight, right? It's hard for me to entertain that. But just for a second, if Robert Whittaker does beat Khamzat, I don't care what anyone says, he deserves a title shot. Now, they'll downplay it and say, oh, Khamzat wasn't that good, he was overrated, he was all hype, he didn't look good in his last two fights before the fight you beat him in. You know, and that's the way it will go, and they'll make him fight a Sean Strickland or someone like that. But the reality is, right now, facing an undefeated opponent who many believe, including myself, that will be a former champ, if you stop that hype train, then yes, you should get a title shot. That's not the way it will turn out, but you should. Meanwhile, you got Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa fighting. If Paulo Costa can somehow beat Sean Strickland, that will just part the ways for both Khamzat or Robert Whittaker, whoever wins that fight, which will happen first, right? Or actually, no, Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa are fighting at UFC 302. So that's actually going to happen first before Khamzat. But nonetheless, once that fight ends, it'll give us a better idea of, you know, Khamzat and Robert Whittaker, what will happen here. Now, if Sean Strickland wins, and it really doesn't matter which fight is before the other, but Sean Strickland will fight first. But let's say Sean Strickland wins and Khamzat wins. They got to fight each other. Even though Sean Strickland will be sitting back waiting on Duplessis to fight and then calling for a rematch immediately, regardless of who wins, right? Because if Adesanya wins, he beat Adesanya. If Duplessis wins, he can say, hey, that was a very close fight that some people argue that I won. So, you know, that Khamzat gets put on the back burner. So if you're a Khamzat fan like myself, you almost got to be rooting for Paulo Costa, which really stinks. Because I like Sean Strickland. And quite frankly, I don't see Paulo Costa winning that fight. But there's a lot on the line here by the time Khamzat and Robert Whittaker throw down. But you know me. I got Khamzat winning this fight. I think he's tired of hearing, hey, you struggled in the last two fights, right? You had to go down and wait to fight Burns. You didn't look great, but won. Epic third round that could have gone either way, to be completely honest with you. Then you get Kamaru Usman, a fighter that you did not expect to fight, right? You expect a striker in Paulo Costa who's got to pull out, and now you got to face Kamaru Usman who can go to the ground. And what does Khamzat do? He takes him down and controls him for the whole first round. In my opinion, these weren't bad fights. These were good fights. And, you know, before these fights were scheduled, everybody was saying, no, he hasn't fought anyone yet. He fought Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman. And even after those wins, everyone's finding all the negative about it. I look at it and say, hey, he needed some of those fights to humble himself, to force him to go back into training and take it really serious. Not that he doesn't already, but in his mind now knows, like, you know, one of these guys can catch me if I don't go in there ready to go. And therefore, Khamzat is going to be better than ever in his next fight, which happens to be Robert Whittaker, the Reaper. He's no joke. Capable of beating Khamzat. Let's be real. Capable of beating anyone on the planet on any given day. And Khamzat's got to go in there and flatten him. That's the bottom line. Gilbert Burns responds to Joaquin Buckley call out after UFC Fight Night St. Louis win. Burns saying, let's do it. The way I see it, I'm not in a situation to call anyone out or to pick and choose. I don't know if they send me the fight, but if they do, I'll say yes. And that's Gilbert Burns style. And these guys, like, you know, I had a lot to say about Usman, Gilbert Burns. You know, I'm not the biggest fan, but I recognize he's a great fighter. But when these guys fight Khamzat and step into the octagon against them, even Robert Whittaker now, I'm a fan for life. Because there's not a lot of guys willing to do it. There's a lot of guys willing to do this, to talk, but not a lot of guys willing to step in there against Khamzat. And Gilbert Burns did and looked darn good in that fight. And he certainly has my respect, and hopefully he has yours. But him in that situation against Joaquin Buckley would be awesome to see, and a big opportunity for Buckley. One he probably doesn't win, but hey, you never know.
He's gon' fight, he's gon' fight. Hold your breath till the end of the night. Last fighter call, UFC at its height. Yeah. Bringing that thunder with all his might, saying step up, wanna fight? Hold up. Think twice. Gladiator assassin, reckless, no abandon. Walk through that cage, he'll leave your ass stranded.